Hello YouTube. In this next video I would like to show you how to remove high pressure fuel pump. This is a mechanical fuel pump and it is located right here, this triangle looking piece. I would like to show you how to remove it, and I would like to tell you why you would need to remove it eventually, and work on it, and fix those things. So the reason you would ever need to remove this high pressure fuel pump is because it is made out of two pieces. You could tell there's it's steel and aluminum. It's put together, and what happens is, and it's just very easy to miss, pressure fuel pumps begin to leak, especially in the winter time. In the summertime you may not notice that they're leaking at all. It might be just a drop here, a drop there. You're not even gonna really catch it, but you really need to start looking out for this, especially in the colder times, in the winter, especially when it starts getting into the freezing temperatures. The reason they begin to leak behind the high pressure fuel pump, well, first of all, there's a seal. Usually there's no problem with the seal, but it could be the seal. But what really happens with this high pressure fuel pump is behind it there is these bolts. There's 6 bolts, but 4 of those bolts they begin to come undone. Due to the working nature of the high pressure fuel pump, I mean, there's a lot of high pressures going on in there, and because of the pressure, because of the vibrations of the engine, those bolts, they sort of become unhinged. They just start coming loose, twisting out. I'm not sure exactly how long they last. I guess every Sprinter is different. Every high pressure fuel pump is different depending on who put them together at the factory. They're usually pretty good. They're made by Bosch, but these do leak, and they're just leaking from the back pretty much. The reason they start leaking in the winter time versus the summertime, because whenever the engine heats up, or at least it's kind of like warm in the summertime, the metal expands, and it tends to, even those bolts are just a little bit undone, it tends to keep things together, keep it from leaking. But in the winter time, especially when the cold starts, it's really cold and the metal is like it's not expanded, so you're gonna start noticing some leaks. And I recommend some of you guys, whenever you start your vehicle, especially in the winter time, even in the summertime, go ahead and every time look underneath your van, just in the front. It's very easy to do. You're gonna start seeing some drips, maybe like a couple drips, and be curious, maybe take like a little napkin and dab it in whatever is dripped down, and see if it's antifreeze or maybe that's diesel. And if it smells diesel, a lot of times it's going to be your high pressure fuel pump. And another way to tell that it's your high pressure fuel pump, when you're going to get into the mountain areas, especially like driving like through Tennessee or Kentucky, some of those mountain areas, or California, it doesn't really matter. What you're going to start noticing is your battery light will start to flash, kind of like indicating your alternator is kind of going dead, and you're going to start thinking, my alternator is going dead, and you're going to end up replacing the alternator, which is going to fix the solution, the problem, but it's the problem's still going to remain with the leaky high pressure fuel pump. What happens is, when they start leaking, even like a little bit, of course, when you're going up the hill and stuff, the reason they start flashing is because now you need a little bit more oomph, to get up that, that hill in the mountain areas. So like the belt will start to slip on the alternator, and there's no alternator for me to show you guys here, but it's supposed to be located like in this little area right here. So what happens is, when the high pressure fuel pump begins to leak, it starts dripping on the actual belt, because as you could kind of tell, look, it's situated right above the belt. So if this is one of the pulleys here, and the belt would be kind of like over here, it's actually going to be dripping right on the belt. And at first, of course, just a little drop there and there, you're not going to really notice anything because it's going to work normally. But what happens is, those little drips, they end up actually getting right inside of your alternator. And they're gonna start causing your alternator actually to start malfunctioning, because some of that oil from the diesel actually makes it inside of the alternator. It gets on the brushes and stuff, and it causes all kinds of problems. you're gonna really think you have a faulty alternator or something else. You might think, is that the alternator solenoid or something going bad, or what's going on? And it could be very confusing when this little thing here is causing all the problems. And the way to fix it is, all you gotta do is pull your alternator off. I mean, not an alternator. Alternator will be, actually you might need to pull it off and, you know, clean it. At least. If you have like a lot of problems with it. Like if you don't have problems with it, then don't worry about it. But you got a bolt right here. You got another one right there. And another one right there. It's usually held down by 3 bolts. Maybe some models are different. But this is a 2006 here, and it has 3 bolts that's holding it down. It's gonna come out all together, you know, with the sensor part of the piece. You know, that's how it's gonna come out. And you'll have to disconnect this fuel rail line right here. And you'll need to disconnect these 2 fuel lines right here. Now, very important, when you're gonna attach these fuel lines, if you're gonna reuse your factory clips, it's gonna begin to leak. And you'll just need to use some high quality clips that's like no pinch. These clips here, they're okay, but they pinch the tube. It's not very recommended. They'll work, but the problem with these is eventually they're gonna rust out and they're actually gonna break on you without you really knowing. And then one of your pipes could slide off and you're gonna have a lot of diesel everywhere, and that could be really messy. So use some kind of clip. I'm gonna show you what kind. Here's the factory type of clip that's on those things usually. It's one of these. I really don't like them. I don't think some of you guys like them either. You'll need special pliers, you know, to put these on. And even if Mercedes puts them on, if they're reusing these, oh, they come undone very easy once they're actually used. When they're still new and you never took them off, it's a pain to get them off. So I would recommend, no, not this. Let's see here. Something like this. Whenever you actually, you know, replacing your, you're removing these high pressure fuel lines, you'll actually probably just use something like this. This is a non-pinch type of clamp here, and they might have some better ones. Maybe try to find some that will not rust, and just use this instead. They'll grip them really tight, and you shouldn't have any leak problems. Okay, now I'm going to remove this high pressure fuel pump, and I'm going to show you exactly what bolts undo themselves, and the way to fix that problem is, if you find some bolts that's kind of like loose, I recommend you remove those bolts, you clean them, you clean the holes, use some like brake cleaner, let it dry and everything, and then just put a little bit of Loctite. I use the blue kind on the bolt. So put some Loctite on there, let it dry first, like maybe leave it for like a minute to dry, and then put it in there and tighten it up. I'm not sure what kind of torque setting is, but you know, be very careful not to strip the threads. Just tight it to where if it feels tight, just do just a tiny bit more, and that's usually how I do it. I have the feel for it, so very easy to strip the aluminum. But most likely it's actually, when you put in the bolts in, it goes through the aluminum piece right into the steel portion of the this part here, because they're made out of 2 parts. Most likely you actually have steel right behind it. But anyway, still try not to strip the threads, because this piece at the dealer, they're gonna sell you a refurbished one for $1,900. It's that expensive. Online I have seen these pieces range between $500 and $700, but the problem is they end up charging like a core, $300–400 for a core, and you'll have to send a core in, and it's kind of like inconvenient, because even if you pay $700, you got a $300 core, you'll still pay like $1,000 for it, and you may not even need a new one. You may just need to tighten those bolts up, and that's it. Saves you $1,000 right there, you know. So I'm gonna get to removing this high pressure fuel pump next by removing those bolts. To remove these little bolts, you're gonna need to use like a 8mm type of fitting here. This is the kind I'm using, kind of like with the little stars inside. This is not a correct tool, even though it can actually work. You'll need to use something from the E type of tool. This is a E12 type of tool, and you could tell the threads inside, you see they're kind of like not It's a little different. I'm not sure what to really call this thing because I'm calling that a star and this a star. But this is a E12, and if I had a E10, it would really fit in there pretty nicely. They go by weird different sizes, so most likely it's a E10. So this here, it's a 8mm, and you could tell, look how nicely it really fits on there because it's very long, and you just have this little piece that kind of sits on the end, easy to put a tool on there. I mean, it's going to be really nice to use. This piece is by Cobalt. It's a really nice set. I've got these when I was like 18 years old. They've lasted me like already like for they lasted me already like for like 18 years so far. By having a lifetime warranty. This is like from Lowe's. I'm pretty sure Husky's the same. I have some Husky stuff as well. You'll also be able to trade them in for like a new tool. I actually never done it because I actually had never failed on me. So yeah, even though this tool might not be the correct type of head, unless you have something very long, then most likely it's not gonna really work well for you because it's gonna be like too tight. I mean, there's really no space right in there, you know, for that of even like a E-set, unless they have an extended one like this, which they probably should. I don't see why not. I just don't have that in my toolkit. So I'm going to go ahead and undo 3 bolts. I'm gonna undo the fuel lines right there and this fuel rail line, and I'll get back to you. Okay, these bolts are already undone. They're just still in the holes. Fuel lines are out. Now to remove a fuel rail, I always been using a 9/16. I mean, it doesn't grip it like very tight, but I'm just gonna try to undo it. But look, works pretty well to try to undo them, and it is also counterclockwise type of thread to try to remove it. So it's a pretty simple one to use. That's what I would recommend using. And the bolts of the high pressure fuel rail, they were not on there really tight. They were just tight on there enough, like the way it's supposed to be. Very easy to break loose. And it shouldn't be too hard because it's an aluminum block. And that one is already out. And the only reason I'm showing you how I'm removing this, even though it's common sense, that it really does not take too long to remove it. It's just 3 bolts. It just it just looks kind of hard to remove it, but it's really not. You just got to be willing to try to work on it yourself. When I was pulling this type of high pressure fuel pump out on my other van in the winter time when it failed on me, when I actually pulled it out, man, the bolts actually fell out of there. I actually had to fish for them. At night, I ended up having to repair it. I believe it was like 2 o'clock at night, and I was doing it for the first time. This is my 3rd time doing it now. But for the first time I was removing it and I was able to fix it, no problem. I didn't even know you could fix it at that moment. That was my first time. I got lucky, I guess, when I took it off. I've seen exactly what's the problem. I'm like, okay, the bolts came out, so that's the problem. So you got to put them back in. So I cleaned everything, installed everything, and of course, right now, I'm making it look easy. That's because everything else is out of the way. But whenever you're trying to work on this on a sprinter that's put together, it might be a little bit intimidating. You're not going to have this kind of access like I have, unless you really decide to remove everything. But the way to actually do it is you'll have to get the grill off. If everything's put together, you'll have to pull the grill off. You'll need to get loose your lights bolts and everything from the radiator support. And once you get those things loose, the radiator fluid could stay, but remove some of the piping that's kind of like in the way, you know, and then just pull the radiator support away from the engine. Put maybe like a 4-inch type of a 2x4 in there, or some kind of block, anything that you could use to pry in there between the radiator support and, you know, the engine. Just put something in there so it gives you room. So this is kind of good right here with me showing you, with everything not really being in the way, what exactly you're going to be removing and what kind of tool you're going to need to use, because It's going to be kind of hard to visualize everything because the only thing that's going to be visible is the top bolt, and everything's going to be in your way, and it's going to seem very difficult. But it's not really difficult. Just, you know, pry it back. And I mean, if you really want to go all out, I mean, I still don't recommend it, but you would have to probably remove your radiator support and, you know, your disconnect the AC lines. If you have a working AC, which is going to be very inconvenient for you because now you'll need to pump new Freon, and sometimes when removing those AC condensers, you end up breaking it because those bolts sometimes really get seized on there because they're like, I don't know, they're probably like made out of aluminum or something, so they get on there really tight and you could easily break it. So anyways, these little bolts are out. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this piece off and show you what it looks like in the back. Right. Every piece has been disconnected, so it's ready to be pulled out, and the way you pull it out is literally just kind of like pull on it. It's gonna be kind of difficult to pull on it at first, so I recommend you wobble it from left to right just by twisting it like so. Just keep twisting it. Use like 2 hands on it if you can. If you have access, you'll probably have to go from the bottom and try to just pry it out like that, but that's how you do it. Alright, the high pressure fuel pump is out. This is the mechanical fuel pump that pumps all your fuel to your fuel injectors. Here's the back side of it. It's exact reverse. I flipped it over. Whenever you remove it, make sure you watch out for this little piece here. It might try to fall out on you. So if it falls out, just fish it out, no problem. Clean it up. So what I wanted to show you here, okay, here we go. The proper tool for this is, it's one of these here. I have a mechanics tool set, and this is by Gear Wrench. It's called a T30. So I just have sort of like a screwdriver type of fitting underneath, so it's gonna be easy to show you. This is the bolts that usually come loose. They seem to be tight on this one. It's not a really proper way of actually checking them because I have to actually hold the piece down to see if they're loose or not. But this is obviously a no-brainer. The way I pulled it out, those bolts are all the way in there, and this is the way it's supposed to be. So these bolts are actually not loose. Usually you don't have to worry about these two. They usually don't come loose. The ones you have to worry about, it's this one and that one. But this is the biggest one. Usually these two come apart. If they come apart, when you pull in the fuel injector out, sometimes they'll end up actually dropping down to the bottom and you'll have to fish for them. You get lucky if they actually make it through, and you could just collect them on the floor, but they might get stuck in there somewhere, making it very difficult. So if you pulled your fuel injector, a high pressure fuel pump out and it wasn't causing any problems and these bolts are tight, I just recommend just clean it up with some kind of brake cleaner and then, you know, put a clean piece in there. This is probably the obvious. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to include maybe a video that's showing you how I did that one job in the winter time in the snow. It took me 4 hours to do everything because it took me 2 hours to disassemble the whole front end and everything that was in the way, and it was dark, it was snowing, it was super cold. I think it was like 15 or 20 degrees outside, and I was doing it till 6 o'clock in the morning. I believe I started like at 2 o'clock at night, and I was able to finish everything. But I think this is a good video to show you exactly what you need to do whenever you have this problem. Also, another thing I would like to mention is if your vehicle is starting bad, like if you have to, if you already pre-warmed your glow plugs and you're just trying to start it up and it just takes a very long time to crank, it could be other things, but this is also could be due to this high pressure fuel pump. Some of the other things that could be causing no start condition, if you keep trying to start your engine, it just keeps churning, it just doesn't start. Okay, high pressure fuel pump is one of them. Okay, the sensors that's on here, sometimes those sensors end up going bad. It's worth a try replacing the sensors since they're going to be cheaper than fuel injectors. Fuel injectors would be the next thing I would try, and that would be the most painful one. All the fuel injectors are out of this Sprinter. I pulled them out. 3 of them came out pretty easy. I had 2 of them, it was really stuck on there, but I pulled them out. Most likely, if you're gonna end up pulling fuel injectors out, be ready to spend some money on at least used injectors. Or I recommend just buy a whole set of fuel injectors. I mean, if you went this far, get a whole set of fuel injectors. Make sure you use that special grease that Mercedes sells, or you could use the NTC's type of stuff that any parts store sells, that's made out of like nickel type of stuff that you put in your spark plugs. Also use the stuff on your glow plugs. So I recommend you putting that on the actual body of the fuel injector. Don't put it on a nozzle. And you'll want to actually really do that, because the fuel injector, it's made out of steel. And since it's made out of steel and it's going to aluminum block, a lot of times it oxidizes the metal. And over time, I mean, it really gets seized on there. So you'll need to have some kind of lubricant, either from Mercedes, and you'll spend 50 bucks for that one. So probably not a fun thing to do is to spend that much money on it. The one that would work is, like I'm saying, for the spark plugs, just use that one for NTC stuff. The grease needs to handle high temperatures, and that one definitely could handle high temperatures. Don't be afraid to use too much, because you know, on the fuel injector, because you're not gonna hurt anything. You'll actually just at least keep it from getting seized down in there. So next time it's gonna be easy for you to pull them out. So the next problem is for the no start condition would be the high pressure fuel rail. Okay, that's the next one. Usually the sensors fail. I believe one of these sensors you could replace and the other one you can't. At least that's what I've heard. So it's a $900 fuel rail. So I hope it doesn't fail on you, because you could be spending just money on the fuel injectors or the fuel rail. So that could be expensive. So anyways, thank you for watching my videos. I really appreciate it. Come back and see more. I'm gonna have a huge library of how to work on your Sprinter. You know, so I think it's gonna be pretty easy to pick those videos out of my other ones. Just, you know, look for the Sprinter videos. The reason I've been doing this because I had problems on my Sprinter, and there's just not a lot of videos out there that I found for the problems that I had. So now I'm actually gonna put them out there, so it's gonna be at least in my library. For anybody that subscribes, they're gonna have everything right there, so you could see exactly what you need to do if you haven't done it, or maybe hopefully learn something new. I know I learn something new every time from even working on it myself. So thank you guys, have a good one. God bless you. Bye bye.